Hello everybody and welcome. Matt and I are here tonight in our position of doing the Dare to Be You stuff that we're doing, and the lovely Jill has been helping us out a lot with that. And one of the things that I was really interested in that Jill had done was she had written an amazing book all about anxiety, and I know that was something that I struggled with a lot, and I also know that Matt has been in some quite anxious places. Jill very kindly asked me to read her book before it had even come out, and I was really impressed. I loved it. It was very simple, very easy to understand, really easy to resonate with. And I just thought it would be really, really great to have a chat with Jill tonight about her book, about what it was she saw, why she wrote it, any of these things. So do you want to tell us the title of your book first, Jill?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for coming, first of all. The book is called now, it had a different title when I was working on it, but it's called Victim of Thought, Seeing Through the Illusion of Anxiety. I had to remember. It's long. Which we came up with actually when I was there in England with you. I had a whole list of potential ones that I was looking at, and Deb helped me say, "Oh, this one's good."
Yeah, that was definitely the one that resonated with me. I really liked it. So I really loved the book, and I loved that in the beginning you shared quite a lot of your story and what you'd seen. So do you want to share some of that with us? What it was you saw? Why was it you wrote a book about anxiety? What kind of...
That's like that takes like the whole book to
oh, well, just read the book then. Give up this, just read the book.
Yeah, there we go, we're done. Well, really, I think I chose anxiety. I mean, I could have written on any number of subjects of things that I've had insights on over the past 3-4 years since I've really had my, I don't know what you call it, transformation, let's say, from old Jill to new Jill. But anxiety seemed, when looking back at everything that's happened, anxiety seemed to be the cause of lots of other things, and lots of changes that happened to me. Once my anxiety lessened and it didn't seem as important to me, or it didn't seem to be always something going on in my head, other things in my life changed for the better as well. So that's why I wrote about anxiety, the whole book about anxiety, and there weren't, as far as I knew, any other books, at least that talked about anxiety in the same way as I had been thinking about it, from an inside out way as opposed to outside in, from anxiety being created within us from our own thoughts as opposed to situations and people causing our anxiety, which is sort of the whole premise of the book, that it's not other things causing our anxiety. It's thought in the moment that creates our anxiety. I don't know if I forget exactly what your whole question was.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I know, I don't know everybody who's on this call actually, so that's interesting. So I don't know where people are with their understanding, what they know, but I know it was really a game changer for me when I saw that things outside of me didn't cause the way that I was feeling. So, and that obviously is kind of what the book is based on. Do you want to share a little bit, in case I know there's other people going to listen to this call as well afterwards? So will you share a little bit about that, what you saw, how, the whole changing from outside in to inside out, what that means, what that's about, what is different particularly about this take on anxiety than most of the conventional ways that we're taught to look at it and deal with it?
Sure. And I think that speaks to the title a bit, because, the whole victim of thought thing, when we think that everything outside of us is disturbing our peace and causing us to feel scared or sad or, any other emotion really, when we think that, we become a victim to our thoughts, because there's nothing we can do about it. Other people are going to do stuff, situations are going to crop up, and we basically are a victim of that. But when we see that it's really thought in the moment that's causing our anxious feelings. Here's how it works. What I talked about in the book and how I believe it works. And I think science and stuff corroborates this as well. This is just very, the layman's explanation. So what happens is something might happen in life or whatever. We have thoughts coming through our heads, and some of them turn to anxious thoughts for whatever reason, and it could be anything. But we get anxious thoughts come in, and it causes like a chemical reaction in our bodies. Our bodies are like these chemical factories. So we have what you've probably heard of before called the flight or fight response, and that's basically to keep us safe. So all these different chemicals come, adrenaline and other stuff that cause us to either just in the moment kind of tense up or whatever, so we can do whatever we need to do if something really scary is happening in the world. But that's the anxious feeling that comes with the anxious thought. So we don't even know that we have a thought. Something happens in life and we feel this anxiety, and we just assume that something that happened has caused the anxiety. When it's really that somehow a thought came, and most of the time they're like unconscious. We don't even know we're having them. I spent my whole life not really even knowing I was an anxious person until it wasn't there anymore. What happens is it becomes the norm. For me, it was just normal. Like, I was a kind of scared kid. I was shy. Things would happen to me in school or whatever, and if my circumstances changed, like, I was fine as long as everything was going along my normal day. But if something weird happened, like a story in the book about in my first grade class, for some reason my teacher wasn't there one day, and we had to go to the cafeteria with all the other classes in the school. They must have been, looking back on it now, they must have been doing some special thing for the teachers or something. I don't know. But that just for whatever reason scared the crap out of me as a shy kid, being with all these people. There was all this noise. It wasn't my usual routine. And my stomach just started hurting, and I started crying as a first grader. And kids noticed and, told the teachers that were there. And I went to the nurse and went home. And I felt better at home, but, not having this having been my first experience with this kind of situation, I didn't know what the stomach ache was. The next day I was supposed to go to school, stomach ache's back again. So my mother takes me to the doctor. Doctor says nothing's wrong. And then next day, stomach ache again. This time my parents are like, you have to go to school. And so, no, I don't want to go to school, whatever. Whole thing ensues. But, as it turns out, I could see later when school was out for the year and, the summer came along, which I think was probably just a few weeks later, because I don't really remember this going on for that long. I was fine again. So even I could see there was some connection just between whatever was happening in the world and me feeling that anxiety. And that, so we just associate it with whatever's happening in the world.
It's really easy because I can see where so it would be really, really easy to straight away blame school and things that are happening like that. It kind of makes sense that we would join it in that way, doesn't it? It looks like somebody does something, we feel this way. And like you say, a lot of the times the thoughts are very unconscious thinking. We have so much, because we're not necessarily, when you're talking about thought here, it's not necessarily always a thought that we're aware of or we know about necessarily.
It's usually not. And that's what I learned later when I started observing my thoughts as an adult, like in yoga class. I saw that we had these layers and layers of thought that I didn't even know existed. And it wasn't until my mind was a lot clearer that I realized how much anxiety was in there, in my head. And so I presume that just most, I don't know if everybody's head was the same as mine, but I'm kind of assuming that most people have lots of thoughts going on in their head, and in those thoughts, that we don't pay attention to. There's a lot of anxious ones as well as angry ones and sad ones and everything else in between as well. And it's not until we really start to look at them that we realize how many there are. And so when you have that head full of thoughts, all those feelings are coming with them, because every thought comes with its own feeling. And so we have all these different feelings just like happening to us all day long. And until we realize that it's thought, in the moment, where we become a victim. But when we realize it's thought, and it's just energy, thought is just energy. So we have this thought energy coming, and thoughts are supposed to just flow through us. And there's nothing scary about a thought, about thoughts in general. They're just energy. When the more we start to know that and seek the evidence for it in our daily life, the less it bothers us, and it's just kind of magically, you can't really be scared of just thought energy when you realize what it is.
Yeah, there was something else you said earlier that really interested me, because I really saw this for myself as well. It was like you kind of got to a point where you believed that, or you maybe didn't even know something. I think you just kind of thought that sort of anxious feeling was just normal, and it was what you didn't even realize. Maybe that, I know for me, what I saw in that was, I didn't even think that there was anything better. I thought this was how life was. I kind of went around with the feeling like I was walking on eggshells the whole time, and I just kind of thought that was life, that was how it was, and I didn't even realize that it was possible to feel better than that. So, and interestingly, like when we were talking to Matt earlier, when we were talking about the question that I asked him, I think sometimes what we're pointing to here and what you've written about in this book is so life-changing that we can believe that if things are kind of okay, we've got it as good as it can possibly be. And what I've seen since I came to look in this direction, that actually what I thought was absolutely the best that I could be was nowhere near as good as now I've started to sort of really understand this. There's whole new levels of peace in my mind. And it's not to say that the same stuff doesn't happen in my world. I've got 3 grown-up children, and I'm selling my house, and it's not that stuff doesn't continue to happen, but the amount of peace of mind that I can have, I never realized I could have that amount of peace of mind.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When we don't have peace of mind, we're constantly seeking that, and like, because it is our default state to have peace of mind. So our bodies are always trying to get back to that peace of mind state. But when we don't know that peace of mind is coming from us, is inside of us already, beneath all those anxious thoughts that we're generally living with, when we don't know that, we seek other things. And so life for me became like one big addiction. It was always looking for that next best thing to make me feel that peace. And I would get immersed in people, like friends, girlfriends, that I'd have a new best friend when I was younger, but all the way up till I was older, and that I thought that they were making me happy, until they didn't. And then they would get tired of me because I would be bothering them, constantly like looking to them for my happiness, which they couldn't really give me. And then they would be like, go away, you bother me. And, so I'd seek the next person, or my husband, or my kids, or my computer, especially my computer. I still do that one. Or alcohol as well. I was drinking at an early age because it was just something to make my head feel better, to make me feel better. And yet the joke was on me, because that's what I saw later on, that peaceful feeling I thought I was getting from the outside things, my friends, my computer, was actually just the feelings coming from me, because that's where our feelings come from. And it just comes from having a clearer head. And even without a clearer head, that peacefulness, that happiness, we're born with that happiness. It is our default state if we just kind of let it be, let it happen. And I use the analogy, which other people have used as well, of the snow globe. If you think of our heads or our thoughts or whatever as a snow globe, those things you shake up at Christmas time or whatever with snow in them, that's all the thoughts. When we're caught up with a lot of anxious thoughts, that's the snow globe all shaken up. In fact, oh no, I don't have one here. I thought I might have had one. It's all shaken up. It's our thoughts in there. And so we think, all right, well, how do I settle my thoughts? Because that's always the next question everyone wants to know. How do I settle them? And you're thinking, well, all right, well, how do I settle the snow globe? I could move it around a lot, but that's not going to work. That's not going to settle it. It's just a question of once we put it down, it will settle on its own. And it's the same with our thoughts. When we let them be, you know, and not get scared of them, put more scared thought on top of already scared thought. When we just can let them be, they settle on their own, just like the snow in the snow globe. And then, you know, you feel that peace, because the peace is then there, the clear blue sky, the clear snow globe, whatever, the clear head. You know, you've all experienced it. We've all had anxious times that have settled, because they always do. You know, nobody, as much as they may like to claim that they're anxious every single second of every single day, it's just, nobody is that. You know, you can't really exist in that state. And you get sick, and people do get sick from being in that state, because we're not meant to be in the constant flight or fight response. It's unhealthy for us, unfortunately.
Yeah, I loved also when you were talking earlier about, you were pointing to relationships and other stuff. And I know the book that you've written, once you begin to look in this direction, and it might be that it's kind of anxiousness brings you, you know, you might be attracted to this book because of anxious feelings. But as you get to understand, if you look in the direction that you're pointing at and start to have insights around what it is that's actually causing your anxiety, you know, as you see through the illusion of this anxiety, it's like all sorts of other things in your life begin to get better as well from that effect. You know, you talked about relationships and stuff like that, and I've noticed that understanding this can kind of make all sorts of things that, and I suppose it goes back to what I was saying a minute ago as well, this whole point of not realizing that we're in this state, and all sorts of things begin to get better. And I've seen some beautiful reviews of your book and some lovely things, because you've also got a Facebook group that, I don't know if people want to join it, you know, if they've got questions about the book, you've got a really good Facebook page. And I've seen some lovely things written in there about people having insights once they've read your book, because it's a really simple explanation of what we're talking about here. You know, the way that you write, you're an extremely good writer. You've got your blogs and everything really interested. You write very, very well. So it's really an easy read. And yeah, there's been some people having some really great insights from what you've written. So I think that's
I mean, that's really my hope with writing it, you know, is that other people can perhaps get some insights as well, because I didn't have panic attacks. I mean, I'm just like a regular person who's just anxious a lot, and I think so many people are in that boat. But I also like to say that even people who have anxiety attacks and panic attacks, this same information can help them as well. Like, it doesn't really matter what your level is, because a friend of mine who read the book before it was finished, you know, she was a little skeptical about that, because she said, well, my anxiety is, you know, way worse than yours. You know, you didn't have my life, you didn't have my mother, you didn't have this. And I said, well, you know, I had lots of that stuff as well. For whatever reason, you know, I managed to cope with it. But this explanation, it's still the way it works. You know, this is still the way it works. And the most important thing is to just find that evidence. And I said it through the book a million times, like, look at how things really work, that life isn't, that the things outside of you are not what's causing your anxiety. And you get, the more proof you get for that, the better it will be for you, even though you have to take responsibility then for how you feel in a way. Even it's not your fault, and it's all done innocently. I mean, we're not making ourselves anxious on purpose, and I don't want to put that on anybody. You know, anyone who's anxious already doesn't need that. It's all done completely innocently, but at first it seems like, well, I don't want to take the blame, but it's actually so much better when you realize that, because you're not a victim. You just, not being a victim is great. Even, unfortunately, a lot of people in society hold on to this victim status, and it's easier to be to just be the victim. Well, you don't know my life. You haven't had all these things happen to you, and you become a victim, and then you get attention and all these other things that you can get out of this victim status. But you're never going to feel better as long as you are a victim, really. I mean, until you can see that there are ways that you don't have to always feel this way, because it's not these things outside of you causing it. That happiness is underneath all that thinking, and it's there for you to tune into. Once you know that.
It's knowing that there is, because I know, like, exactly what you were saying earlier, that it kind of can look like that is as good as life is ever going to get. You know, when it looks to us as if life does work from the outside in, we can kind of think, well, this is as good as life can get. And I suppose this is pointing to, and then it's easy to, if it does look like you're a victim, you can see why that would be sort of helpful to stay in that victim place. And yet once you realize that actually getting out of that victim, there is something better on the other side. And I can kind of really answer that, because I definitely was. I put myself in a victim, made myself a victim, and lived as a victim for an awful lot of my life. And I know how hard it looked, because it was a huge jump to kind of come from being this victim to actually taking control and taking charge of my life. And I had no idea that actually doing that was going to be this good. So it can be quite difficult when you're in that place. And like you say, it's really good that we're not on any way at all putting any blame on anybody or saying there's any fault in any way. This isn't a way for anybody to beat themselves up or anything like this. This is absolutely just pointing to an amazing way to change your life, really, a brilliant solution to the fact if you are suffering with anxiety at all. I wonder if there's anybody who's listening, anybody on the thing who wants to ask a question, or anyone that's got any comments or anything. And I know Matt is kind of here along with me. Hello, Matt. So I don't know whether he's got anything, if he wanted to jump in and ask any questions. Is it okay to open it up for questions, Jill? Are you happy for that?
Absolutely.
A bit late now, love. I don't know if I've got any questions, but I certainly want to reiterate about the sort of the anxiety and from coming from the outside in, because for a long time I really struggled with flying, and I would have panic attacks, like unbelievable panic attacks, before I get on the plane. I even got to the point where I was taking diazepam and beta blockers and still having a panic attack on the plane. And I just believed that was how it was for me, and that's what I've got to deal with. And as I started to get the understanding, that all changed, because I realised it was just my thought playing tricks on me, and I could actually decide whether I was having a good experience or a bad experience at that time, because I was still going to have the experience. And the anxiety, the panic was all coming from inside and nothing to do with being on the plane. And as I've started to get that, I can now jump on the plane. My mum lives in Tenerife, so for me to see my mum, I've got to go on a 4-hour flight, and I just jump on back and forth like it's a bus now. I don't take anything. I don't have any negative thought, and the odd occasion the thought comes in and tries to trip me up, and I tell it to do one, and I get on the plane and I have a great time. And I actually enjoy flying, and that's probably the strongest sort of, for me, experience that I can say that's how it was. I mean, or that's how it is for me. When I was at school, I totally and utterly get the whole feeling sick before you go to school. And I put that down to being bullied and this, that, and the other. And I connected everything with school. And I hated school for so long because I believed that was causing my stress. Because I didn't realise, and my parents didn't realise, nobody realised that actually it was all coming from inside. So I think I can't wait to read it myself, actually. It's going to be a very interesting read, this book. Thank you, Jill.
So Matt, what did you do to make it so the airplane doesn't bother you anymore?
I think one of the biggest things for me was the realization that the feeling was coming. I had attached the feeling to a thought, and the thought that I would find was, what if we have a crash? What if the engine stopped working and we're 7 miles above the ground? Well, I then, working with Deb massively on letting go of the outcome. So when I let go of the outcome of, well, either we're going to land safely or we're not, and I'm in this situation because I want to be. So I can either decide that it's going to be a great experience crashing to the ground or landing nicely, or not. That is, there's no point in me. I got nothing out of living the non-existent reality of crashing, because it hadn't happened. It wasn't happening. It wasn't reality. I was in the moment, and I'd made the decision to get in that plane and go to the place I wanted to go to. And I could either land feeling fresh and excited that I'd had a great time or not. So I had to let go of the outcome, because equally I could get knocked down by a car walking down the street, but I'm not going to stop walking down the street in case I die that day. And I think ultimately it all came from probably a fear of death. And now I've let that go because it's going to happen anyway one day. I have no control over when. So when I let go of that and understood that it was all coming from my thought in the moment and it was all rubbish, it was just like a massive weight lifted, and I could get on and enjoy flying, because every time I landed, I'd go, yeah, I really enjoyed that flight. Sweat dripping off me, exhausted, drugged up to my eyeballs. I'd lose 2 days of my holiday asleep, sleeping off the drugs, and then spend the rest of the week panicking about coming home. I was like, I've got to let that go. So I just let go. And
that's so, I mean, I love that story, because it's future thinking. So much of anxiety is future thinking that we really, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future for real anyway,
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And even if we make a best guess, we just don't know. So future, you have no choice. You're already on the plane, like you said. So you're going to die or you're not going to die, and there's nothing
exactly.
there's nothing you can do. So well, yeah, why be anxious about it? But it's the same in just any situation where a lot of the people who have very bad anxiety or severe anxieties, because they're all, so many bad things have happened to them in the past, and so they get so nervous about it happening in the future again.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, you don't have that control, and I guess it's our way of believing somehow that we have control, I think, or wanting control that we don't have.
I also think that what happens in society, you can get diagnosed with anxiety, so therefore you believe you are an anxious, but you have anxiety. There's nothing you can do about it. You've been diagnosed. So therefore you buy into those feelings that are happening, and, well, I can't possibly do. But, with not having control, I have no control whether I wake up in the morning, but I'm still going to go to sleep tonight. And I'm not even going to hope I wake up in the morning. I suppose I'm going to bed assuming I will wake up in the morning. And if I don't, I won't know anything about it anyway. And it's like, now I look back, I can laugh, because I think, it's absolutely ridiculous that I've wasted so much of my life and energy not living and enjoying the moment, because I'm so worried about what might or might not happen in time ahead of me that isn't promised to me. And when I look back, I'm like, wow, I'm 41 and I can't say as I've lived my life. I've not lived those 41 years. I've spent it in an anxious mode. And instead of enjoying what's happening today and what I'm doing and where I'm going, I'm worrying about whether I can make next week, next year, 10 years time be what I have planned it to be. And it all trickles all the way down to comes back to the same point of our mind making up a story that we buy into. And then we live in that moment that we've bought into, feeling that that's real and true from the outside, and it's not, it's from the inside.
Yeah. And you're right, it's so much time and energy that we waste on that. Our whole lives are just, you like you said, you become exhausted because you're you can feel it all. I know when I would get so anxious, I could just feel it all in my head. I'd have such a headache, and probably my blood pressure was up, and it's such a different experience when you can still get those thoughts. Like when I traveled to England and I was visiting Deb, and I had to switch trains and all this stuff. And years ago, that would have, I would have been so anxious and worried about it. Like, which train, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, and I would have had a headache for sure. This time, it was really interesting because I was observing it, and I could kind of hear those thoughts in my head, like which train. And I did, I made sure I asked the questions to people, but it was in so much more of a calm manner. Like I never let it get up into my head somehow. It never became anxiety. Even it was just those sort of thoughts there saying, come on, don't you want to engage in me? And
it's like then a fact-finding mission rather than a how can I be safe mission. It's a fact-finding.
Because of that, I did have a clearer head, and I was able to more carefully, read the boards and make sure I didn't just hop on any train just because maybe it was the right one, which, believe me, I've done in the past. I think we're talking about this on a different webinar too, but it's a different experience. So you still, it's not to say that those thoughts won't crop up.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a different way of engaging with them, or not engaging with them, I guess, is more accurate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's the same with other people. We worry about not only ourselves, but our friends and our family, and worry is just anxiety too. And there's something in us that makes us think that when we worry, that it's because we love that person. If we didn't worry, we wouldn't. It means we don't love them or something like that. And yet it's such
conditioning.
And we have no say in what's going to happen to them generally. On if we're worried about them for whatever reason. I mean, yes, keep people safe as you can, but it's not in our power to keep them safe, to keep ourselves completely safe. And the world is the world.
Yeah,
and it serves no purpose.
We do. I think it's very, very easy to make those connections. I know for me, I kind of connected worry with love. And that is an innocent connection that we make. It's kind of like, I know a lot of people, and especially with children, and I know Matt's got a couple of children, I know you've got children, Jill, and I think it's very easy to kind of believe that if we don't worry about our children, it means we don't love them. And seeing through that for myself, I remember when I saw through that one and saw that actually worry doesn't equal love. It's just bonkers. It's crazy. Just when you actually stop and look at the logic of that if we love somebody, we worry about them, that just doesn't make sense. And actually knowing that I can totally love my children and not have to worry about them at all took a massive amount off my plate. I can totally love them and I don't have to add in all this worry. Like, I had all these hours free because I wasn't worrying. It was just huge when I kind of realized that there was no connection. And I know earlier you were talking about, I think that is one of the things, because as we look out at the world and we kind of have experiences, it feels like things are connected that aren't connected. And then as you get curious and look in this direction and begin to just question, is there truly a connection there? And then we kind of, it's almost like it looks so obvious when it's like, how did I miss that? How did I not see that when you see it? And yet we don't. Until we do, we don't.
And that is something massive that I've learned from you, Deb. And when I managed to let go of worrying about all the scenarios that I made up in my head over the last year with the kids, that's all gone, and my time with my kids is so precious, because instead of me worrying about what impression I'm giving them and what might happen when they go back to their mum and what might happen when they're at school, and because I don't worry about that, I'm fresh as a daisy when I've got them, and life is great. And then if there's something for me to do at some point, I'm in a good place to be able to do it, because I haven't worried myself into believing, well, I knew that was going to happen, see, worried about it for a year. And yeah, it's great. It's very freeing.
Yeah, because it does free up a huge amount. When we kind of begin to see through the anxiety and the worry and all these kind of things, it just frees up an enormous amount of headspace, doesn't it? And it's not, like you say, you know, if you've got children, it's not that, it's never about shirking your responsibilities and not doing things that need to be done. Totally, you know, we're not pointing to that at all. But just having the headspace to do what needs to be done from a really clear space is brilliant. And yet, you know, when we're kind of in all this worry, when we believe that if we, to prove we love somebody, we need to worry about them and do all these, we just haven't got the headspace to be as effective when there is things to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so much better for our children to, you know, to trust their own, they have their own inner guide and wisdom as well. And when we're constantly on top of them, did you do this? Is this, you know, make sure you do this. They don't get to access that because we're so busy, you know, doing it for them, and because we're worried, instead of, you know, they're good, they're fine. Most kids can bring up themselves if you let them, you know. I mean, they just need some supervision, a little bit.
It's really easy as a parent, I think, to innocently teach our children to be anxious. To kind of to teach our children not to trust their own wisdom. And, you know, that I could so see how I did that with my children. I was so anxious when they were small. I was such an anxious person that I very much taught them to be very anxious and to not trust themselves and to worry about things and to see things as potentially dangerous and all things, you know, all sorts of things like that. And one of the brilliant things that I have seen, because I was like that the whole time my children were small, and one of the amazing things that I just love about this understanding what your book is pointing to is that as soon as I began to understand this, even though my children were much older and practically grown up, it still had a huge impact on them. The fact that I have changed has had a huge impact on them. So, you know, you can turn it around at any time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's part of the beauty of this, or actually probably the most beautiful thing about this is when we change, like everything around us changes as well. All the people in our lives change. People see something different in us. We act differently, we see people differently, and then they look differently. I mean, it's like got this amazing exponential thing that happens, that everybody just changes. Like I see, I used to say I had, you know, 3 difficult people in my life that were hard for me to see, even once I had insights. You know, I thought it was still difficult a lot of times with my husband, the relationship with one of my daughters, and with my mother. And then when I was saying that to someone more recently, and then I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, no, actually none of those are they're not, I see it now with them for the most part. I mean, they're not, I don't consider them like the hard problem anymore, or the difficult thing, because even with them now, I see it. I see you take your responsibility. When I took my responsibility for the way our relationship was, any one of those people or anyone else in my life, my responsibility, and looking back and seeing how my anxiety actually played a part in our relationships being strained, or however our relationships were, because I was anxious. Like I could see my anxiety. I'd get scared if somebody would say something to me. I would get scared, and then I would act in a certain way that then would cause them to act in a certain way. You know, you have this dance with these different people. But when I was less anxious or didn't engage with my anxious thoughts as much, the dance doesn't happen anymore. I don't do the same. I don't have that relationship. And so the relationship transforms completely. And it can be like that with anyone in your life. And that's where the outcropping into relationships. My next book will be relationships.
Yeah, that is brilliant. Yeah, one of the things when I kind of often about relationships, you know, it's said that, you know, oh, within a relationship, oh, it takes two to tango. And I remember ages ago hearing Aaron Turner do a talk about relationships and kind of say, that's the bit we've got wrong. It does not take two to tango. And that was kind of like, what? You know, it's kind of, there's not two. And that was just amazing to me to realize that within any relationships, it was enough for me to understand. And if I understood, it could change everything within that relationship. And that's not to say that every relationship is always perfect, but it is always enough. You know, I know a lot of people kind of, well, you know, if I understand this, what about the other person? But it's really not important. And I know with my children around the anxiety and everything, I kind of thought, oh, they need to know this, I need to tell them, I need to make sure, and with other people. But the other really great thing, it's brilliant to share this and share it with everybody. But if people don't want to know, it's absolutely fine if it's only you that understands.
And that's so key, because that's the first thing we all, for me for sure, and I've heard other people as well, the first we hear about this, we're like, oh, he could use this, she could use this, they could use this, everybody can use this, I'm good, you know, I basically get this stuff, you know, you always think, I've always known this. And you know, so many people I talk to, they have that, just, can you tell it to my daughter, can you tell it to so and so? That's what they want to do. But no, it doesn't, that's not it. It's you, always you, everything, anything that's going wrong in your life, it's you. And it's not to say people aren't doing things that are bad, or that you need to stay with people who are treating you poorly, or that you should put up with anything bad, but you do play a part in it. But also you can come from a place of love and still not be with that person anymore. You will do it in a better way. And but there are opportunities you may not realize where you can actually end up staying with somebody who potentially did treat you poorly at one time, because they're not, your whole dance, it could potentially change. And if they're feeling that love from you, instead of you being scared because of all this anxiety, they're going to act differently. It's because everyone's just looking for love. Where, you know, the people who are acting mean or whatever we think they're being mean, they're really just seeking love, and they're acting out as a way to get it. It doesn't usually work, because we don't want to love those people who are being mean. But if we see that that's all they want and give them that love, they won't be mean anymore. That's miraculous as well. And if they still are mean, then that's fine. Then don't be with them.
So has anybody else got any questions at all? Because I'm kind of aware of the time we've been, you know, this has been a great conversation. We've been really getting into it. But does anyone else want to add anything to the conversation or ask any questions at all?
You can do this, or unmute yourself, or I can unmute you.
Hello, Jill. Hello, Debra.
Hello,
Yvonne. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I'm halfway through the book, and it's great, just great. I have to say that. And what I've seen in it is I don't know the word. It's all thought, yes. And the root in my world to every feeling is our insecure thinking. Turning into anxiety or fear or any of those horrible feelings. And understanding our insecurity is opening up the possibility and the power to decide how to move forward. And that's become more and more the longer time goes, the key to me creating the life I'm aiming at, understanding that it's all thought and it's often insecure. It's always insecure thinking when I'm feeling bad in any way,
Yep.
anxiety or fear or anger or whatever bad feelings. It's insecure thinking.
Yep.
And Jill, you're pointing to it in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I that seems to be it. Like it all stems from how we're insecure, and again, that's that wanting love. You know, we just looking for love, and we never feel like we get enough of it because we don't realize, again, that's inside of us. It's the same thing as that happiness, the peace that I talked about at the beginning. Like that's already there, and we're doing everything we can to seek it everywhere except where it is, and we don't feel like we're getting it, and so we have those insecure, anxious thoughts.
Yeah. I think the very act of trying to seek it gets in the way of us feeling that it's already there. It's kind of that thing, isn't it? We get into it and go seeking it, and then it kind of stops us feeling it from within.
Yes, and it's even more obvious, the absence of insecure thinking. Then the only feeling that's left is love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scientists is talking about materia and energy as the only substance in the world, in the universe. And I'm a firm believer that love is the only feeling that doesn't need any thinking. It's there when we can, in the absence of every other thought.
So that's what's left when it's all gone.
Yeah, that's what's left. It's our true essence.
It's what's there first and what's left when we let it all.
Yeah. And that's really it. That's our innate health that I talk about in the book. Yeah. That's our wisdom. That's what's the default state. That's our happiness. That's our peace. It's all, it's love. I don't know if I don't think I probably characterized it that much as love in the book. This book, the relationship one, I probably but peace more. I because in terms of anxiety, that we're only really looking for peace of peace of mind, and that's it. It's under, and it's just. It wants to bubble up, it wants to come up through those thoughts.
It's our resilience coming up. That's love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Talk to you later, Matt.
Yeah. Now I know who it was that sent me a friend's request. I was like, who's that? And then you came up on here. So, I'll accept that then.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, has anyone else got any comments or questions or anything that they would like to add?
Don't be shy. Don't be anxious.
Nothing to be scared of. You can ask.
I still get anxious when I was in Michael Neal's advanced 3 principles course for the past few weeks. It's done now, but he was just calling on people indiscriminately, but you had to have your hand raised on Zoom like this. And to me, like, it was funny. I didn't even raise my hand, but just the thought of other people being put on the spot, because then he'd ask them like these really, what seemed to me to be hard, deep, really deep questions, like what is love, or something like that. And I was like just beside myself with anxiety. And I do these talk, it made no sense, but there must be some residual things from school of like getting called on when I'm not prepared.
Love it.
No, I'm not going to call on anyone here because I couldn't do that to people.
I could.
No, you'll make me anxious. Because you can make me anxious.
Yeah, of course. I was just going to say, because of course I have the power to make you all anxious. Yeah.
It is funny.
It's really interesting, isn't it, how we can still, and that's one of the things that I love, that getting this understanding doesn't make you not human. I love being human. I absolutely love the things that we can do in the world as human beings. I love playing this game and doing that. And I love that getting this, you know, sort of starting to understand this and starting to look in this direction doesn't make me any less human. It kind of feels to me like we can be the best of humanness when we look in this direction. Sort of we get the best of both then, because we still, it's not like I never feel anxious. It's not that, exactly like you're saying, you know, I'm sure if I was on Michael Neal's Zoom and I thought you might ask me a question, yeah, definitely it's easy. And, you know, there's other things that, and I get anxious feelings sometimes, and I get every feeling I've ever had, it can come and go. But it's just understanding that we don't have to be scared. Just because we're having anxious thinking doesn't mean we don't have to be scared. And when we stop being scared of our own thinking, it just, I don't know, it either flows through more easily, or because we're not scared of it, it sort of doesn't matter if it's there. When you think of the monster under the bed, you know, with kids, if they think there's a monster under their bed, when they see that it's just a pile of old clothes or whatever, it doesn't matter if the pile of old clothes is still there. Really doesn't matter, because, you know, you just sort of stop noticing it.
And that's something that I want people to realize too. You know, that's why I will tell about the fact that I do still get anxious. Like, you're not going to be completely free from anxiety, you know, and so it's not like you're a failure if you read my book and you have insights, but you still are finding that you're anxious. But like, we still get it, because we are human, and that's okay. And if it helps and makes it be less, you know, less often or less scary or less anything, then that's great. But that's not even really the goal. It's more just to know where it's really coming from. Like, just that alone, just to know the truth. Don't you want to know the truth in life? You know, like we've been sold this pack of lies for our whole life that other things can cause us to feel this way. Just to really know that that's not how it works. Even if you get nothing else out of that, that's the most important thing about all this, really.
And I think then from that understanding, it's kind of, then it looks to me, it sort of opens up where you want to go with it. Because we're not pointing, like you say, we're not kind of saying, well, actually, when you understand this, you have to do this, or you should do this, or it must be like that, or whatever. It's very much, you know, look in this direction and then do what you want. Do what you want with it.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it is you want with it, that's fine. Just understand, just kind of don't. It's when you're being fooled by a misunderstanding. So you're taking actions and doing what you're doing from a misunderstanding, from kind of like a foundation of that isn't truth. But when you're coming from something, you know, like you say, when you're coming, you can still make any choice you want to make. That's fine. There's not the direction we're pointing in doesn't tell you how you should then live your life. That's then, you know, and I think that's one of the things that I found just brilliant, opening up and doing what I want in my life, and not from a place like anxiety and all those sort of things, and worrying about what other people thought about me, and people pleasing stopped me doing so many things that I wanted to do. And I love, like, you know, you've written this amazing book, and Matt and I are up to this thing in the world called Dare to Be You, and that is Dare to Be You. And what we're up to there was just completely and utterly getting out into the world and doing what I want to do for no other reason than I can. And I, you know, kind of, that's what I love about this understanding, just getting out into the world and doing what you want to do because you can. And I've watched you with this book, and kind of, we talk fairly regularly, Jill, and I have seen you and the Facebook group that you've gone into, and it's just the way you talk about it and what you do and how you help people around this. It's just kind of, I like it. It's what I want to do. I'm having fun with it. There's not this, you know, just because you can.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's to me that's what life's all about. And, you know, that's what I tell everybody, just, it's about having fun. And so if we're saddled with anxiety so much, then it's, you know, it's impeding our ability to have fun, really. You could, I mean, I had fun all my life and I still had anxiety. So that's not even true, but I can have more fun knowing the truth of how things work and just not letting it bother me as much. I mean, the things you guys are planning to do, you know that you're still, it's scary and you still will probably have anxiety, but who cares? That's, you know, that's the motto, really. Who cares? That's what it all comes down to.
I think that, that's the whole thing, isn't it? That's what we're pointing to. As you begin to understand, you kind of see that caring gets in the way. Who cares? It's kind of like, let's just do this. Let's just live this life. Let's just have this life, because life is just, it's fun. It's really cool when you sort of go out and do the things that you want to do. When you write books, when you create Dare to Be You, when we create events, it's fun, because as human beings, we like to be up to stuff. Create, you know, one of the things with the energy that we have running through us called thought is creative energy. And it's brilliant to be creating. And when we're kind of caught up in our heads and caught up in all this anxiety and we're not doing these things, I think, you know, life can be more difficult. Life can be, it feels like a drudgery and hard. And as we begin to kind of step into this place and the anxiety lessons, or we understand that anxiety, it kind of opens up things and opens up possibilities for us to do all sorts of things out in the world and just have it as our playground.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, well, I was just going to kind of say for you, the book is on, I know in England, because we're in England, I know that I've looked on Amazon in England, and the book it's at a brilliant price. I think it's £1.54 on Amazon, and it is a great book and really, really worth that much of anyone.
Yeah, $1.99 in the US. So yeah, I wanted to keep it affordable because it's not about the money for me. I just want people to know the truth, you know, of how things work. And so I hope that, you know, people will get it and learn that. And as I said in the book, and anyone who's listening to this now or later, you know, to the recording, you know, I'm always happy to talk to anybody about this. If you have questions, you can email me. You can also, you know, sign up for my newsletter, which is just my blog post at whatdidyoudo.com, and, you know, join the Facebook group that we have for the book as well. Even if you haven't read it yet, it's fine. You can still be in the group. But yeah, I just love to share about it. And I've sold, I think it's about 380 copies so far. So we're making some progress.
And we are looking, I know the event that me and Matt are doing, if there's a way we can get you over from America to be there, we would just absolutely love that. But I know you've kind of said that.
Awesome.
You're happy. Yeah, it'd be cool, wouldn't it? We've got to come back over to the UK again.
What's the dates again?
The dates of our event.
9th of October.
And me and Matt are also doing a skydive. Matt said how scared he was about flying. Not only has he kind of seen through his thinking about flying, both of us are actually going to be doing a skydive out of an aeroplane on the 10th. Well, maybe we will on the 10th of September.
So the reality of me plummeting to the floor is going to happen. Yes.
If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. Right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's totally how it looks. So, you know, if anybody wants to find out more about the stuff that me and Matt are up to, that's Dare to Be You. We've got a Facebook page, Dare to Be You. We've got a website, daretobeyou.co.uk. You want to kind of follow our story and see if we actually do manage to jump out of the aeroplane and yeah, so, and Jill has very kindly said, you know, people that come to the event or everything, you're happy to talk to them as well, and they can get in touch with you and look at your book.
And if we don't survive the parachute jump, then Jill, it's over to you on the 8th and 9th.
That's true.
Perfect.
And we'll just be there in spirit, my love.
I'll channel you both. All right, that sounds good. Thanks for having this chat with me, Deb and Matt.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. It's brilliant. Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thank